Hey everyone, welcome back to Mindset Rebuild.
It's great to be here.
We're all about helping you beat stress and stay focused on what matters most, and I'm Alan, your host.
And I'm Rebecca.
And Rebecca is our resident expert on all things productivity and focus. And today, we thought we would do something a little bit different.
Yeah, a little bit of a change up.
And we are going to be diving deep.
That's right.
Into a book that's become really popular with our listeners.
Yes, Deep Work by Cal Newport.
And just to give you a little bit of background, Mindset Rebuild, this show, is for busy creators and business owners who are trying to do it all.
Right. And I feel like a lot of our listeners are probably already familiar with the concept of deep work. But
yeah, for sure.
Today we're going to really kind of dig into it.
Yeah, we want to go deep on deep work, right?
Exactly.
So Deep Work by Cal Newport, it's really all about this idea of, how do we find that focus in an increasingly distracting world?
Yes. How do we create that space for ourselves to do the work that really matters?
And, Rebecca, you were saying this before we started recording, but it's almost like deep work is becoming a superpower today.
It really is. It's becoming so rare and so valuable in a world that's constantly trying to grab our attention.
And I think that's why so many people are struggling with it, right? It's like we've lost that ability.
In a way.
To really focus for extended periods of time.
Well, because everything is, bite-sized and quick and, our brains are being rewired in a way to crave that constant stimulation.
So let's define it then for anyone who maybe isn't familiar with the term. What exactly are we talking about when we say deep work?
So at its core, deep work is about dedicating focused, uninterrupted time to professional activities that push your cognitive abilities to their limits.
Okay. So it's not just about, checking things off a to-do list or responding to emails. It's about
No.
really those activities.
It's about creating.
Yeah, that require a different level of thinking, a different level of focus.
Exactly. It's the work that really moves the needle in your business, in your creative endeavors. It's, for a creator, it might be writing that blog post or developing that new product.
Right. Or for a business owner, it could be.
For a business owner, it could be, analyzing market trends or developing a business plan or really having those critical conversations that can make or break a company.
So it's strategic work. It's the kind of work that really makes a difference.
Absolutely.
Okay. So then how does that contrast with, I think, what most of us are doing a lot of the time, this kind of shallow work?
Yeah, the shallow work. So shallow work is all those things, the emails, the meetings, the, kind of the busy work that keeps us feeling productive, but doesn't actually move us forward in a meaningful way.
Right. And Newport really makes this distinction in the book between deep work and shallow work.
He does. And he argues that we've become so accustomed to this shallow work that we've almost forgotten how to do deep work.
And what's interesting is that he also talks about how this ability to do deep work is becoming more and more valuable in the workplace.
Absolutely, because in a knowledge economy where so much work can be automated, the ability to think deeply, to solve complex problems, that's what's going to set you apart.
So it's like a competitive advantage.
It is. It's a huge competitive advantage.
Okay, I'm starting to see why we need to pay attention to this.
Yeah.
So if we buy into this premise that deep work is important, that it's valuable, that it's maybe even a superpower.
Yeah.
How do we start to cultivate that ability? How do we start to get better at doing deep work?
So I think before we jump into the how-tos, which we'll definitely do, it's helpful to understand why deep work is so beneficial, why it matters beyond just getting things done.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We always talk about, the importance of, being productive and getting things done, but there's more to it than that, right?
But so much more to it than that.
There's a quality of work, a quality of life.
Exactly.
That comes with deep work.
And a sense of fulfillment, too.
Okay, so before we get into those specific strategies, let's talk a little bit more about what those benefits are and why they matter for our listeners.
Good.
So what are some of the key advantages of doing deep work?
Well, first and foremost, deep work enhances your productivity. It allows you to get more done in less time, which, as busy creators and business owners, I know is a huge priority for you.
Time is the most valuable resource we have.
Exactly.
So if we can use it more effectively,
yes,
that's a huge win.
Huge win. But beyond just getting more done, deep work also unlocks greater creativity. When you're able to focus deeply, you're able to think more clearly, to make new connections, to come up with innovative solutions and original ideas.
And that's especially important for creators, right? I mean, that's where the magic happens.
Absolutely.
When you can get into that flow state.
Exactly the flow state. And then finally, deep work leads to increased fulfillment. When you're engaged in work that's challenging and meaningful, you feel a sense of accomplishment. You feel proud of what you've created. And that combats burnout. It keeps you motivated and keeps you coming back for more.
And it's interesting because Newport uses this great example in the book of Carl Jung, the famous psychologist,
Oh, yes.
who built a stone tower
Yes.
just so that he could go and do deep work.
Like specifically to do his writing and his thinking, he would retreat to this tower.
And I think it's so powerful because it shows that even someone at the top of their field, like Carl Jung,
Right.
felt the need to create that space for deep work.
That separation.
Yeah.
It's essential.
So, okay, let's say I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, okay, this sounds great.
Yeah.
I want to start incorporating deep work into my own life. What's the first step?
Well, Newport outlines 4 key rules for cultivating deep work habits.
Okay, so 4 rules we can follow. This is starting to sound doable.
Yes.
It's rule number 1.
Rule number 1 is work deeply.
Work deeply.
It sounds obvious, but it's really about structuring your day to prioritize focused, uninterrupted work.
Okay, so it's not just about, finding an hour here or there. It's about really being intentional.
Yes. It's about being intentional about how you structure your time.
Okay.
And one of the key strategies for working deeply is to establish rituals to minimize decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue. Now, what is that?
Okay, so decision fatigue is that feeling you get when you've made too many decisions in a day and your brain is just fried.
Oh, yeah, I definitely feel that. Like, by the end of the day, I can't even decide what to have for dinner.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's like all those little decisions, they drain our mental energy and they leave us with less capacity for the important stuff.
Okay, so how do rituals help with that?
By creating these predetermined routines around your deep work, you eliminate those small draining decisions. So you decide ahead of time when you're going to work deeply, where you're going to work deeply, and what you're going to work on.
So it's like having a set time in place.
Yes.
For deep work.
Yes.
Almost like a sacred appointment.
Exactly.
With yourself.
Yes. It could be as simple as saying, every morning from 9 to 11, I'm going to work on my most important task in my home office with my phone on silent. No decisions, just action.
Okay, I like that. No decisions, just action. So it's about removing those barriers.
Exactly.
Those mental barriers to getting started.
Exactly.
Okay, so what other strategies are there for working deeply?
Well, another really powerful strategy is time blocking.
Oh, time blocking.
Have you heard of this?
I have. I've tried it, but I always seem to struggle.
To stick with it.
Yeah. Things come up, the urgent email, the meeting that gets put on the calendar last minute.
Right, right.
Any tips for making it work, especially in, the kind of world that we live in where things are so unpredictable?
Yeah, and I think the key here is to really treat these deep work blocks as sacred appointments. So you wouldn't, just casually cancel a meeting with a client. You need to give these blocks of time the same level of respect and protect them from intrusions as much as possible.
So it's about being protective of that time.
Exactly.
Okay.
So one thing that's really helped me, and I know a lot of other people, is to actually block out that time in your calendar. So make it visually clear that that time is unavailable. And communicate that to your colleagues, to your team members. Let them know, hey, during these times, I'm heads down. I'm focused. I'm not available for meetings. I'm not available for, those quick questions.
So you're setting those expectations up front.
Exactly.
Rather than constantly having to react
Yes, exactly.
to whatever comes your way.
So for example, every Sunday evening, I sit down with my calendar, I map out my week, I block out time for deep work, for meetings, for admin tasks, even personal commitments.
So you're being proactive.
Proactive, not reactive.
Rather than letting the week just happen to you.
Exactly, yes.
I like that.
And that has been a game changer for me in terms of consistently carving out that time for deep work.
Okay, well, that's really helpful. Let's move on to rule number 2 then, which is embrace boredom. This one sounds a little counterintuitive, right, in our always-on world.
It does, doesn't
it?
it?
How are we supposed to embrace boredom?
Right. Well, we live in a world of constant stimulation, right?
Right.
We're constantly bombarded with notifications, updates, pings from our devices. We've become so accustomed to this constant influx of information that even a few moments of stillness can feel uncomfortable.
Oh, I totally relate to that. If I'm waiting in line for more than like a minute. I'm like reaching for my phone.
Right.
Even if I don't even know what I'm going to look at,
Exactly.
it's just become a habit.
Exactly. And that's the problem, because this constant need for stimulation is actually weakening our ability to focus for extended periods.
So it's like we're training our brains to have shorter attention spans.
Yes, and
Yeah.
to crave distraction.
So how do we retrain our brains then?
Well, the key is to embrace boredom, to get comfortable with those moments of stillness.
Okay, but how do you actually do that? Do I need to like sit in a silent room and stare at a blank wall for an hour?
No, not necessarily. There are more practical ways to do it. So, for example, one thing you can try is resisting the urge to check your phone every time you're waiting in line or riding the elevator or even walking down the street.
So just be present
Be present in the moment.
in those little in-between moments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Instead of immediately reaching for your phone, just observe your surroundings, take in the sights and sounds, or let your mind wander freely.
Okay.
Another thing you can try is taking short walks without headphones or listening to music. Allow yourself to experience the quiet, to just be with your thoughts.
You know, I used to do that all the time before I started listening to podcasts.
Right.
I wonder if I need to go back to that.
Yeah, it's great practice.
Okay. Let's move on to rule number 3 then, which is quit social media. Now, this one I think is going to be tough for a lot of people, especially those of us who use social media for work.
Yes, it can be a tough one.
So how do we approach this one?
Well, I think it's important to remember that Newport isn't saying that everyone needs to abandon social media entirely. His point is that we need to be honest with ourselves about the role it plays in our lives and in our work. Is it truly helping us achieve our goals, or is it simply a time suck?
Yeah, I know I've definitely fallen into that trap of scrolling mindlessly through social media
Right.
for hours when I should be working.
And it's so easy to do.
But how do we break that habit?
Well, one thing Newport suggests is a 30-day digital detox challenge.
That digital detox.
Yes.
So what does that look like?
So for 30 days, you commit to stepping away from all non-essential social media platforms. No Facebook, no Instagram, no Twitter, unless those platforms are absolutely essential for your work.
Okay, so how do you determine whether social media is essential for your work? Because a lot of businesses use social media for marketing, for connecting with customers.
Right. And if that's the case, then the key is to use it strategically and intentionally, not habitually.
So set some boundaries.
Set boundaries, set time limits, designate specific times for engagement, and be really ruthless about avoiding those mindless scrolling sessions.
So it's about being in control of your social media usage
Yes.
rather than letting it control you.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. All right, let's move on to the final rule then, which is drain the shallows.
Yes.
This one sounds almost like a battle cry.
It kind of is.
What's this all about?
So it's about becoming ruthless with your time and energy and setting firm boundaries against shallow work.
Okay, so all those emails and meetings and administrative tasks that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly, the stuff that feels urgent but isn't actually moving the needle.
So how do we start to drain those shallows?
Well, one effective strategy is batching. So instead of letting those shallow tasks interrupt you constantly throughout the day, you designate specific blocks of time to handle them all at once.
So like setting aside an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon to respond to emails rather than constantly checking your inbox.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
And by batching these tasks, you reduce the mental switching costs and you free up those larger chunks of uninterrupted time for deep work.
That makes sense.
Okay, what else? Delegation is another really powerful tool. If you have tasks that can be effectively handled by someone else, consider delegating them to free up your time for that more strategic or high-level work.
Oh, delegate. This is always a tough one for me.
It can be?
You know, I like to be in control. I like to feel like I can do it all myself, but
Right.
I know it's important.
It's essential if you want to create that space for deep work. And remember, delegating doesn't mean you're losing control. It means you're leveraging the strengths of others to maximize your own effectiveness.
Oh, so it's a reframe.
It is.
It's not about giving up control. It's about
It's about working smarter, not harder.
working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
I like that.
Oh.
Okay, what else?
And then finally, perhaps the most important strategy of all, learn to say no.
Oh, 2 little letters, but so powerful.
So powerful.
Why is saying no so important?
Because saying no to unnecessary commitments, meetings, requests is crucial for protecting your time and energy. It's about setting those boundaries and being firm in your priorities.
And I think that's especially challenging for entrepreneurs and business owners.
Absolutely.
You know, there's that pressure to say yes to every opportunity to network with everyone to be available 24/7.
Right. And it's easy to fall into that trap, but saying yes to everything often means saying no to your own goals and priorities and ultimately to your own well-being.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that you can't do everything
Right.
and that it's okay to be selective
It's okay to be selective.
about where you invest your time and energy.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the 4 rules of deep work,
Yeah.
the benefits, and even some of the challenges, but I want to acknowledge, real life is messy.
It is.
Distractions are everywhere. Old habits die hard. It can feel overwhelming to even know where to start.
Absolutely. And Newport addresses those challenges and offers some practical solutions. So, for example, a common hurdle is feeling overwhelmed. You look at your to-do list, it feels like climbing Mount Everest,
Been there.
right? So the key is to start small. Don't try to overhaul your entire routine overnight. Instead, begin with even just 30 minutes of focused work each day and gradually increase the duration as you build those focus muscles.
So small, consistent steps can make a difference.
Absolutely. Progress, not perfection.
Progress, not perfection.
I like that. Okay, what about interruptions? How do we deal with those?
So interruptions, kids, colleagues, the doorbell ringing incessantly, the world is full of distraction.
Oh, yeah, especially when you work from home like I do. It's like there's always something
Always something.
vying for your attention.
So communication is key. Set clear boundaries with your colleagues, with your family members. Let them know when you're unavailable and why. Establish those do not disturb periods during your workday and utilize technology to your advantage. So turn off those notifications, silence your phone,
Yeah.
maybe invest in some noise-canceling headphones.
Exactly. Create those little bubbles of focus.
Okay.
And then finally, there's that fear of missing out or FOMO. That nagging feeling that you need to be constantly connected to be in the loop, to not miss out on anything.
Oh, social media definitely fuels that feeling.
It does, but Newport encourages us to reframe this narrative. Instead of thinking that you're missing out on shallow activities, recognize that you're choosing to invest in something far more meaningful and valuable with your deep work.
So it's about prioritizing what truly matters.
Exactly.
And recognizing that true fulfillment comes from creating something of value,
Yeah.
not from endlessly consuming content.
Yes, and by shifting your perspective, you can overcome that fear of missing out and embrace the rewards of deep work.
Okay, so we've talked about the 4 rules of deep work, the benefits, and even some of the challenges. But before we wrap up this part of our conversation,
Yeah.
I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier, which is this idea that deep work isn't just about productivity. It's also about fulfillment.
That's right. Yeah, and one of the most rewarding aspects of deep work is that sense of satisfaction that comes from creating something truly valuable.
Like you're really tapping into your full potential,
Yeah.
using your skills and talents to their fullest extent.
Yeah, and Newport talks about this idea of building a craftsman's mindset.
Oh, craftsman's mindset. I like that. What does that mean?
It's about approaching your work with a sense of intentionality and pride, focusing on the quality of your output, not just the quantity.
It's about the craft.
Exactly.
And, that really resonates with our Mindset Rebuild ethos, right? We're all about helping creators and business owners
Absolutely.
find that sweet spot where they can do work that's both meaningful and impactful.
And deep work is a key ingredient in that equation. It allows you to tap into those unique skills and talents to create something truly valuable.
So if someone is just starting out on their deep work journey, what's one piece of advice you would give them?
Start small. Don't try to go from 0 to 60 overnight. Begin by identifying just one area of your work where you can carve out some dedicated time for deep focus.
So maybe it's blocking out an hour each morning to work on that big project you've been putting off, or setting aside 30 minutes each afternoon to brainstorm new ideas.
Exactly. And once you've established that initial habit, you can gradually increase the duration or frequency of your deep work sessions.
So it's about building those focus muscles over time.
Precisely. And remember, consistency is key. Even just a small amount of deep work done regularly can have a significant impact on your productivity, your creativity, or overall well-being.
I think that's such an important point.
Right.
It's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about making consistent progress.
Deep work is not a one-time fix. It's an ongoing practice. It's about cultivating a new way of working and living one that prioritizes focus, intentionality, and the creation of real value.
And speaking of creating value, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that our listeners can find more great resources and insights on how to beat stress and stay focused over at mindsetrebuild.substack.com.
Absolutely. We've got tons of articles, tips, and tools to help you level up your productivity and take your work to the next level.
Well, Rebecca, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into deep work. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, remember, the ability to do deep work is a superpower waiting to be unlocked. Start small, stay consistent, and embrace the power of focus. Until next time, stay focused.